Paperweights. Some of you guys were wondering what they were meant for. They hold down your papers, but do they really work? Apparently they do. Hey guys, Ray Pahar from Get Crafty Crafty, and today I'm going to show you guys how to take some magazine clippings, a poster, or some photos and transform it into a resin paperweight. This is actually our second paperweight video. If you guys haven't already, make sure you check out our dandelion paperweight video, and based on some of the comments that you guys left in that video, I'm going to show you guys some tips and tricks today to prevent any of the bubbles from forming inside your resin paperweight. Let's go ahead and get started with today's project. The items that you'll need for today's project include a round silicone mold, casting resin, a lighter. If needed, make sure you have adult supervision for this part of the project. Casting resin mold release, a circular paper cutter, I'll have links to this in the description below, some disposable plastic cups, and some popsicle sticks for mixing the resin, disposable or plastic tweezers, and some magazine cutouts or some poster cutouts that you plan to cast inside your resin. To start your project, you want to make sure that the inside of your molds are clean from any debris or any kind of dust. Using your casting resin mold release, you want to spray the inside of your mold and then dry it out so that it's conditioned and prepped for your resin. In our last paperweight project, I used aluminum foil to hold up the molds while they were casting to prevent any of the bottoms from flattening out for this project. I found that the aluminum foil wasn't strong enough to actually hold the weight of the resin. This time around, I'll be using these plastic cups to hold the mold up in place as the resin dries, so that the bottom of the molds will stay round. Following the instructions in your two-part resin mix, you want to mix enough resin to fill up your mold. Carefully pour your resin into your mold, leaving about 1/8 of an inch at the top of your mold from the rim. After mixing and pouring your resin into your mold, you'll notice some small bubbles have formed at the top of your resin. To remove the bubbles, carefully use a lighter to pop the bubbles at the top of your resin. If you need the help of an adult or the supervision of adults, make sure you get it. When you're using your lighter to pop the bubbles on your resin, make sure you don't overheat the resin, since it could potentially cause the reaction to happen sooner than later and will actually create bubbles on the top of your resin. Depending on the type of resin that you use, you want to let your resin dry overnight until it hardens. While you're waiting for your resin to dry, you're going to cut out and prep the image that you're going to cast inside your resin. I'm using this image of the New York skyline that I got in a magazine to cast inside my resin. Using your circular paper cutter, you want to cut out your image so that it fits exactly on top of your resin. You might have to practice a few times so that it fits right on top of it. Make sure you get the right measurements before cutting it out. The circular paper cutter is a great tool to use when you're cutting out a perfect circle. But if you don't have a circular paper cutter, you can easily just draw it out and then cut it out with some scissors. To cast your image into your mold, you're going to mix a small amount of your resin, pour a light layer of your resin onto your mold, and gently spread it out. You want to make sure that the entire top layer is completely covered and evenly spread out. Use your lighter to burn off any of the bubbles that might have been created when you were pouring your resin. Using your tweezers, carefully take your image and you're going to gently slip it into your resin. You want to make sure that it is completely covered up and that it's completely soaked so that no bubbles can actually form between your resin and your image. Before completely casting off your resin, you can take another small circle and apply it to the back of your image if you want to have a solid color for the back of your project. Carefully pour a final layer of resin to seal up your project. Carefully use your lighter to burn off any bubbles that might have formed when you were pouring your final layer, and then let this sit aside overnight to completely dry. Once your resin has completely dried, go ahead and carefully pop it out of the mold to reveal your paperweight. When you're popping the bubbles on your resin, you want to make sure that you don't overheat it, since it could actually cause bubbles to form on the surface and then cause the resin to harden sooner than expected. Depending on what you cast inside your resin, this can make a great post-trip souvenir, but I'm actually doing the opposite and making this before I go on a trip. This week I'm going to be in New York, so make sure you guys follow me on Instagram at Ray Pahar to see all the different things that I'll be doing in New York this week. If you guys make this project, make sure you share it with me using the Get Crafty Crafty hashtag, and hopefully you guys learned something new about working with resin. I'll see you guys next time. Take care and stay crafty.